All right, we're back. You're listening to Coffee, Chaos, and ProdSec. I'm Kurt Hendel, a battle-tested security architect with zero trust worldview. And with me, I have my good friend Cameron Walters, got to say the full name, the AppSec and DevSecOps builder trying to automate the world. We turn real-world security chaos into conversations that actually matter. So grab your coffee and let's get into it. Cameron, today we're talking about vulnerabilities. I know this is a hot topic for you, and we've even come out of the gate saying we're going to do a two-parter. That's not normal for us. We haven't done a two-parter before, although we kind of hinted at it with like cloud security, but we'll get there a different day. Why are we doing two parts on vulnerabilities?
It's a really good question. I think both of us, when we were like making the agenda for this one, there was just so much, right? I know I'm very
Yeah.
passionate about it. You're passionate about it, both in a good and bad way. There's a lot of things happening in the vulnerability space, with AI coming out, with just legacy problems, companies, the risk approach, the just the whole complexity around vulnerabilities, as well as I would say the ecosystem that the vulnerabilities come from. There's no way we could jam that into one episode. Just like how I felt like kind of the cloud security and some of the other episodes where we're like, all right, we're gonna come back to that. Same with like we've been asked to have another episode around like how to get into ProdSec from a different perspective.
Yeah.
We got all these two-parters we want to come out with. We just don't have enough time. I mean, we could start releasing episodes every day. Yeah, you with me?
No. we recorded two of these in one day once. It was terrible.
It was rough. It was a rough day.
It
Fair
was
enough.
hard. But there's so much to security in general. Like product security or vulnerabilities is a massive topic. There's a million ways to describe vulnerabilities. My knee-jerk reaction, probably like yours and every other practitioner in the world, you say vulnerabilities, and the reaction is effing vulnerabilities, but say the whole word. I'm going to keep it clean here. It, it's just there's so much, and like two parts might not even be enough, but we're going to try.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think from what I understand and how I kind of feel, yes, it's very frustrating, and it's a lot going on. But in the last couple of years, it's kind of exploding in that respect, and so that's what's really frustrating me, right? And there's this mentality that I think people who are not in the cybersecurity world, maybe of other departments, usually, that vulnerabilities are something there's no end to it. I've had many conversations with developers around this. Sometimes they're just they're shocked. They're like, "Why? Wait, I'm never going to stop doing vulnerabilities." Most likely not,
Nope.
because maybe you'll stop doing the vulnerabilities you write personally, but unless you remove like all your open source code or something, you're still going to have vulnerabilities.
This kind of plays into what we titled the episode in the end, or like I kind of pushed for this because thought of this title randomly. I think I was like walking up the stairs. I was like, I got it. But calling it "Get Comfortable Being Vulnerable." And there's a reason behind that, not just because we're leaders and need to be vulnerable as a leader, but vulnerabilities are here to stay and they're not going anywhere. You're always going to have them. So get used to it.
They're literally always going to be coming, and I think that's a reality that we all have to kind of accept and get into.
Yeah. It's to some degree you get a little bit desensitized to it, I feel like, when you're a practitioner, because it's like it's happening all the time. Like a 0-day dropped yesterday with React.js, and I got 16 emails about it today.
Oh yeah.
And
LinkedIn's blowing up about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The world is exploding once again. Or like this happens all the time, guys. Like we're gonna be fine.
Yeah. I mean, we're in the process of managing risk, right? And vulnerabilities are risk at the day. And you've already touched on some of the big topics we're gonna get into. So I mean, I think the one thing that we gotta do is make sure you subscribe, like, smash, follow.
Get it.
Reach out to us on LinkedIn. I'm up to like a couple or more than a handful of people reaching me out on LinkedIn, ask questions and different things, give me advice or, feedback. Love that. The other thing I really want to hear about people is, what do you want to hear? Are there any episodes or topics that you want us to cover? we've got a massive list, just not enough time to get it all out there. So, we're shifting things around based off what people want to hear. So reach out to us.
Yeah, and trends like we did the FFmpeg episode as it was unfolding. So we're always happy to adjust. So if there's a hot topic that people want to hear about, let's do it.
Definitely. Well, the big question, Kurt, is what are you drinking? What coffee you got there?
I didn't have time to like make a fancy cup of coffee today, so I poured some Stoke cold brew. So I think I had this for one of the original episodes. It's Stoke STOK, orange label, slightly sweetened. Put a little bit of half and half in it. It's like ice cream, man. It's
Ooh,
delicious.
that sounds
Yeah.
delicious, dude. Yeah, 100%. Well, I'm having this uh, Ecuador vanilla cold brew coffee. It's pretty good. It's in a bottle. It's in a little bottle. One of the billion coffees I bought, but it was not holiday enough for me. So I put a
Mm.
splash of peppermint syrup that my wife just recently made. So it's Christmas. So we're having in holiday season. So we're putting, I have the peppermint time. So it's really good. It's really good.
She's always got the themed syrup for the coffee.
Oh yeah. Because we go to the store and I'm like, can I buy it? And she's like, no, I'm gonna make it. And I'm like, but you haven't made it yet. I want it.
It's better when you make it.
It is definitely better. So, and maybe less sugar. So, because
Yeah,
usually,
I don't. I want to taste the coffee still.
yeah, it very much still tastes like or like coffee. It does not. That's one of the things I don't like about the flavored ones is there's so much sugar in there. It's like I'm just drinking a shake or something or sugar coffee water thing. Not what I want.
Yeah, and it's synthetic. It tastes like I'm drinking chemicals, so not for me.
True. True. Well, let's define what vulnerabilities are, right? I think that's the big thing. I know when I'm interviewing people, I ask this question, how do you define what a vulnerability is? In my mind, a vulnerability is some kind of weakness in your tech stack, attack surface, whatever you want to kind of call the layer that an attacker is coming through. It is an exploitation path that can be used maliciously. And I always, ask people, hey, what is the opposite? What would not be or what wouldn't be a vulnerability, like kind of a bug? Because that's a big question I hear all the time. Like, is every vulnerability a bug, or is every bug a vulnerability? I don't know, Kurt. Which one's which?
I think so. To me, I mean, I was a developer. I created plenty of bugs in my time, and I fixed a lot of bugs. I smash bugs like it's my job because it was my job. But a bug is when the functionality breaks or it doesn't work as intended, and that's kind of it, right? Like there's no security issue necessarily attached to it. It becomes a vulnerability when it becomes a risk in that someone's going to be able to leverage it to do harm,
Yeah,
whether to the system or to other users or whatnot. And so it's that element of risk that comes with the weakness that turns it into a vulnerability if it happens to be a bug at the same time.
agreed. Like you could have a font on your website that's too big. That's not a
Yeah.
vulnerability, right? You can't really
Right.
exploit that. It's a
Like
bug.
you
It's a
downloaded my
problem.
font. I don't care.
Yeah. It's not the thing that you want, but it's not going to cause your company, an attack path where somebody can do something malicious. So yeah, yeah, I think that kind of makes sense. I kind of like breaking those things down.
Man, one of these days I'm gonna like have you give me a job interview. I want to hear all these questions and just get quizzed in real time.
I've been
I know you
told
do
it.
it to me on here sometimes, and I'm
Some
just like,
hears,
whoa,
yeah.
man.
I mean, I've been told many times that my interviews are much more like philosophical or thought process driven. I purposely do that because a lot of AI, you're seeing a lot of AI stuff
Yeah,
happening around that interviews and people faking interviews and using ChatGPT on the side the whole time. There, if you just ask them facts and basic questions that it can
it's
muddy its way
easy.
through, it's easy.
Yeah,
I want to put the person on the spot and make them think. And the only way you know is if you've been in that spot or you've thought about it pretty deeply. So yeah, maybe
yeah.
someday.
I mean, you just asked that question. I was like, whoa, I got to think for a minute. So
Yeah, yeah.
I don't have any AI open today, so I can't like do stuff on the fly here.
You're missing two fingers, and now you're missing, your AI. Like
You're
you
gonna
got
make
one
me tell
back.
the story. Yeah, you're gonna make me tell the story of how I almost ripped two of my fingers off. I'm not gonna get into that. I'm injured, but they're healing. That we're all good.
We're all good.
They're
All right,
vulnerable. How about that?
they're vulnerable. Perfect. So kind of what's happening right now with the vulnerability space is, NVD right now has, I think a lot when I was checking, like over 240,000 recorded vulnerabilities just in their
Yeah.
database. That's crazy.
NVD, National Vulnerability Database.
Oh, thank
I'm
you
on
for
it
keeping me
today.
true. Thank you. Thank you. And
See?
this year alone, just this year alone, they're at, I just checked right before we started recording, 43,000 vulnerabilities. And then I did the math.
Crazy.
If say that stops, that's 100, like I think 115 vulnerabilities per day coming out. That's
Jeez. Well, and it
CVEs,
goes
right?
up every day.
Yeah. So I mean, we still have another 20 something days left, so that's another couple thousand.
And we haven't even turned AI loose on it fully yet.
Yeah. Yeah, dude.
That's crazy.
It's crazy. It's a systemic major problem. How, that is so much noise, right? Everybody's constantly finding vulnerabilities. And the other side of it, all these vulnerabilities are maybe they're being registered late. So these vulnerabilities have been out there for a long time. There's people who are always pushing for their vulnerability to be a high or a critical, right? To increase the clout risk, whatever it is. That is a big problem.
Yeah, I think we've kind of hinted at this in one of our previous episodes. I think that there's people out in the world that just like go after applications. They want to find vulnerabilities and get that count up, right? To say like I found vulnerabilities, and it's like I get it, but are you doing it for the credit? Are you doing it to improve the world? Like, what's the real driver there? Like, everyone's likes to think big numbers are better. Well, not necessarily. Um, I think, and we'll get into this more later, but because we're both highly opinionated on it, but having a vulnerability just to have a vulnerability doesn't make sense. Like, I'm vulnerable under very specific conditions. Is that is it really a vulnerability, or is it like a lab environment where it was basically crafted? So
Mhm.
it's just there's so much depth to this topic. Like my brain can't even handle it right now.
Yeah. Well, I mean, in like the common trend that I see in the industry around compliance perspectives and different ways that we mitigate these vulnerabilities, or I wouldn't say mitigate, prioritize. Right. The,
Yeah,
the the thing is that we always hear as a leader that I keep hearing is you got to prioritize these vulnerabilities. You got to apply a risk-based approach. You got to ground them in risk. You got to ground it in reality. You got to operationalize them. Right. Here's all these great terms you can use later when you're talking to your,
playing
whoever,
bingo.
playing bingo. Right. And the thing that I always hear is we got to fix the criticals and highs. Right. You
Yeah,
always keep hearing that. But then I talk to my, I have other friends who have bug bounty programs, and they're still paying out full bounties because what are they finding? There's attackers that are chains attacks, right? So sure, maybe they've mitigated all the criticals and highs, but they're still getting, owned, literally owned in their bug bounty programs with like two mediums and a low or four mediums,
right.
right? And if companies, and the thing that we commonly see in the industry is, remediate your criticals and highs first, right? And going back to like the previous episode around like, checkbox security and things like that, you go to any compliance perspective, any auditor, the only thing they're really going to harp about and hammer into the ground really is those criticals and highs.
Right. And I mean, that's I was getting all spun up inside. I like this is the
Hold
check
it back.
boxes,
Hold it
man.
back.
The check boxes again, they come out and the requirement says you get like I think PCI says that you have to address everything that's a medium and higher. And then like you'll have people say, well, the scores aren't meant to be used for prioritization, but you should use them for prioritization. Like you can't have it both ways. So pick one. And I think we're hurting ourselves because it's built this mentality that the compliance says you must address all these vulnerabilities. You must address all of them. Like, you found it, you must address it. What if I'm not actually executing the code that is vulnerable?
Yeah.
Like, I'm not truly vulnerable to that, but I gotta fix it anyway, which takes time, it takes resources. Guess what? We all have less capacity, and we're driving more and more urgency because this number is exploding, like you just said, real statistic from today,
Yeah.
and, like, there's you just can't win. We don't have 100 people fixing these things constantly. You generally have a very small team that's scanning and managing the whole process, and then your engineers have different priorities, and you're creating tickets, and they're like, we don't have time for this either, so what do we do?
Yeah. I mean, we
It's
have more,
chaos.
right? We have more vulnerabilities. We have less time to patch. We have fewer people to do the job. And what's happening? Everybody's in a pressure cooker around this. Teams are getting
Yep.
underfunded, right? I think everybody, most companies are going through constrained, times right now where there's asking to do more with less resources. But the attackers are not in that same spot. Maybe they are in their
Yeah,
own way, but we as practitioners and defenders of these complex organizations, we have to plug 100 million, tons of different holes, and the attacker just has to find one.
they pick one.
Yeah,
Yeah,
just one, right? It is
like,
a
they get to be selective, we don't.
Yeah, it's a perfect storm, right? It's literally a kind of perfect storm, and you're constantly being like, okay, if I fix this vulnerability, is that the right strategy? Is that the right way? That's a question that I'm always constantly acting, right? I'm trying
Well,
to
and
understand.
you gave a perfect example though too, is we have attackers in the world that are either chaining vulnerabilities together, or sometimes they just pick off a medium vulnerability because all the checkboxes say that mediums can sit there longer. So the dwell time is much higher, and the attacker could just be like, it's there, I'm going for it. And next thing you know, they compromise the system. Now, it's not that simple. Obviously, these things are it's very hard to exploit a vulnerability. You got to be very crafty and figure these things out. So it sounds simple conceptually, it's not. But the way that this has been structured in the industry has, I think, set practitioners up for failure.
Yeah. Yeah. I agreed 100%. And I mean, from a practitioner and a leader perspective, the only way I feel the pathway to success around this is some kind of platform that ingests your vulnerabilities and through an automated way helps you contextualize and ground them in
Yeah.
whatever risk based or operational based or based off your environment's perspective to handle them, right? Like that's kind of the only
Yeah.
way. But the problem with that strategy right there is what I'm saying is that most tools out of the box don't give you those
Nope.
tuners and those things. So I'm telling everybody right here on the podcast that hey, you got to go find budget to go buy a tool to do that because you most likely can't do this in house, right? And there's no way you're going to maintain a script. I'm somebody who I inherit tons of teams, and in my past when I've built multiple programs, every time I've gotten there, there's usually custom code and custom things built. That is time. You have to sit down and think about, all right, I have XYZ person, they have 40 hours a week. If I have a script, 20 hours of their week is going to be maintaining and running and getting that script up to date. And if that person leaves, they've lost all that. They take away all that, knowledge over time that they've
Tribal
just learned.
knowledge.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
tribal knowledge, right? And then 20 hours a week too, they're also not working with our developers, helping them fix the vulnerabilities or
Right.
doing some triage already, or, taking things steps further or whatever, other things we have to do. And it's a rough spot.
I think it points out, like, obviously the issue is you buy a scanner, it barfs out a bunch of vulnerabilities, and, like, well, how do you build on that? Like, you have to enrich that data with more data, and the only people who know the environment and can build that context are the people that operate the environment, right? So now you've bought a big expensive tool that finds stuff with zero context, so it's basically useless. And yeah, that's a bit of a hot take, but it is, because you can't fix it all. I looked at a dashboard recently that had over 7 million vulnerabilities. How do you address that? Automation, for one. But you have to build the context through metadata and tagging on the environment and, like, resource priorities. And the term escapes me right now, but you assign, like, well, a business criticality. So you assign some level of criticality to your assets, and you bring all these things together, and then you still have to enrich with other data sources, which I know we'll get into later. But now you're investing all of this time to enrich this kind of dumb data set that you got from your scanner, and you haven't accomplished anything yet. Now you can build a prioritized list and actually go address the things that are truly vulnerable. So it's worth investing a massive amount of time and resources up front to be able to do that. And I'm going to say this because you don't want to lose it in tribal knowledge. You must document what you do every
Yeah.
step of the way. I'm huge on, they're going to be like, oh, he's an architect. All he does is play with paper all day and draw boxes on a page. To some degree, that's true, but there's a lot more to it. Documentation is everything. So that when I'm gone or my team is gone and moves on, someone else can come in and pick it up and continue on with it.
Yeah. It's I mean, yeah, it's true. So, I mean, in teams right now are dealing with, vulnerabilities coming from your CSPM, right? We talked about in our cloud security
Too many.
that's a table stakes kind of tool, right? It's
Yeah.
expected by a lot of compliance. Majority of the compliance frameworks are all heading in
Yeah.
that direction if they're not already there, saying the only way you can meet it is through purchasing a CSPM, right? And that'll
But it has the
surface
same
its
issue.
yeah,
Because that's just like the 7 million vulnerabilities I just talked about, those were actual CVEs.
yeah,
That didn't even factor in misconfigurations and all the crap that the CSPM barks out. So
yep.
take that number and multiply.
Yeah, and so that's what I'm saying. So like we have those
It's
tools.
bananas.
You'll have it's bananas. Yeah, you'll have the CSPM vulnerabilities coming out of it. Maybe you'll have all the AppSec vulns coming from your SAS SCA tool, your infrastructure as code tool, your containers. Maybe you're detecting secrets. Beyond that, you
Yeah.
also are going to have, which leads into kind of the next part of our agenda that we wanted to talk about, which is vulnerability kind of management and traditional vuln infrastructure scanning tools. There's a
Yeah.
billion different names. That's like the Qualys, you know, or I don't know. There's a bunch of other vendors
Like
that scan.
Nessus, Rapid
Yeah,
7,
yeah,
Qualys,
yeah. The
all the
ones that
big
actually
names.
scanned your endpoints, right, and detect
Yeah.
vulnerabilities. Sometimes they do it, actually by being an agent on the system and not. But it comes back to something that we talked about again in the last episode around compliance, is that there's this mentality of a vulnerability assessment versus vulnerability management,
Yep.
and like vulnerability management is I think where everybody should be, but a lot of teams are just operating in this vulnerability assessment kind of cycle.
And a lot of people say we manage our vulnerabilities, but like you just said, they're actually just scanning, and that's like point in time. That's an
Mhm.
assessment. Great. I'm glad you do assessments once a day, multiple times a day, whatever. That's not managing anything.
Yep.
That's just painting a picture and saying, "Hey, check out my picture."
Yeah. Yeah, exactly, right? And that's the big thing that teams need to understand, and we need to understand as an industry, and maybe even communicate upward, that this is a real problem that is going to take a process that is going to be managed rather than just meeting the
Yep.
compliance checkbox where it's, hey, we did a scan, right? We found these vulnerabilities. All right, there's a lot of compliance frameworks that's I keep bringing back to clients frameworks, but that's because that is one of the traditional ways that companies and infosec teams show massive value, right? Majority, sometimes I would say a lot of the time, they're usually compliance driven programs that are meeting compliance requirements so they can do business in whatever area
Right.
they need to
But
do beyond, you know, meeting the customer's expectations too.
we all know how I feel about checkbox security and
Yeah.
compliance-driven security at this point. Again, I'm going to say it. It's the minimum. It's the minimum bar. If you don't go beyond it, you're doing it wrong. And I'm sorry, you're still vulnerable. Like, you need to do things proper. And I get it. Compliance shows value. It's a real artifact. It unlocks business and the rest of it. But if you get popped, your business isn't going to exist very long.
Yeah.
So it's critical that we are able to communicate the value in going beyond just what's in all of these frameworks and requirements. Because too often, in my experience, like at basically every company I've ever worked at, in its security capacity, people are like, "Why are we doing this? Like, is it a compliance requirement? Because we can't break compliance." And I'm just like, "Here we go again." And it's no, we're protecting the data, we're protecting the customers, we're protecting our business. And you can be compliant and still do go above and beyond and do it justice so that your business doesn't falter.
Yeah. Yeah. Building, as you're saying, a management and taking it a step, like 10 steps
Yes.
further, right? You want to
It's
make
the
sure that,
processes, the automation, all of it. You actually actively manage the vulnerabilities that you found in an assessment.
yeah, which also includes, right, a threat intelligence, maybe integration of some sort, really enriching your vulnerabilities that are coming out of these tools and making sure that they're much more grounded and
Yep.
fleshed out, I would say, because a lot of these tools, they kind of surface just the CVE, and you have to kind of
Yeah.
dig from there to understand the true complexity. That's one frustrating thing about me that I see with these tools is that the depth of information that I want from the each vendor is never there. And I would say vendors, I'm gonna throw it on the other way. Vendors are stuck in a vulnerability assessment mentality.
Yeah.
Detect, 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 detect. That's all I keep seeing, right? It just detect, 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 detect. And then you start using whatever vendor and you're like, wait, you didn't think about two different people, right? And I always say two. A lot of people will say one. And this is one thing. If you're ever buying a tool, there's two people. There's the people that are using the tool within this InfoSec team, and then there are your stakeholders. Because there's no way
Yeah.
you're mitigating vulnerabilities alone. I
Separation of duties, man. We
yeah,
can't.
yeah, you want to separate that out. Everybody's got their own expertise, right? And so we have to have that mentality but the vendors don't. Every like majority of vendors I talk to, what do I have to do? I have to slap in some other tool, custom automation. I was just talking with my team today. I have so many meetings where we're just building like so much automation that are hammering these guys, these tools as APIs to, improve, manipulate, change, modify all kinds of different data within all these platforms to really bring the maximum value out of it. And I'm just like, why am I doing this? Am I the only person in the world? Like, I don't, at times I'm like, or is it just that
It's
I build, mature programs? What is it? I don't get it. Why is it's just crazy?
I feel
Chaos.
the same way. I mean, it is chaos. Every tool I've ever purchased in InfoSec again is it tells me a bunch of information, but I can't always do anything with it. And so what do? Well, I talk to my team and say, "Hey, we got to do X, Y, and Z to actually operationalize all of this." And the scale at which we operate is too great for 10 humans to go and tackle all of that. So you get into the world where you got to build automation. The technology will operate round the clock and do its thing, and it never complains. It will fail. It might quit on you and you got to start it back up again. But the sheer reality is that when you scale this stuff out, humans aren't enough. And now people are going to be like, AI is great and it can do it. And I'm like, can it? Because one, you have to build the context. Vulnerabilities without context are worthless. They're just like, oh, you might have a problem. Great. Do I actually have a problem? I need to answer that question because that's what I want to address first. And so we're definitely moving in that direction. Like I had a conversation with a vendor this week that is basically AI augmentation for your SOC. They bring AI SOC analysts to the table, and it goes and investigates your alerts. So can we do the same thing with vulnerabilities? Probably. There's a handful of companies that are coming out of stealth recently and as we speak that are starting to do this augmentation with AI to go investigate and build the context and say, this is what you actually need to care about because humans, you're not going to be able to operate fast enough to ever catch up with it.
Yeah. AI is definitely exploding in a lot of different ways. And I think it's going to be a constant theme in our podcast is just AI on AI, right? It's just going to be this
What's happening in the world today?
wave one wave. I wonder when that kind of mentality will change or if it will, or if it's just going to be amplified. It's definitely an interesting time for all of us as security practitioners.
I think it's an interesting time for anyone in any industry.
Yeah.
Like, my wife's in consulting, and she was listening to one of their like webinars or whatever, and they're talking about like they built AI agents to build their presentations and stuff for them. And I was like, can I get one of those so I don't have to do PowerPoint?
Dude,
Different presentation though.
there are some vendors, I'm not gonna name names, but there are some vendors that I personally use for outside of work for passion projects. There are some cool PowerPoint
Yeah.
makers, tools out there. I mean, I'm not always the biggest fan of AI, but for that perspective, I mean, sometimes I lose that creativity or lose the ability to build a really presentful and story driven presentation, right?
Well, and
I'll
you
use it
get tunnel
to
vision sometimes
yeah,
too. Like, we're in the world of vulnerabilities, like tie it back to what we're talking about. There's so many. So how do you tell the story of what you actually need to do? Sometimes you need a little bit of help.
yeah,
And with the a massive amount of data, guess what? The human brain is a powerful thing. You can't tap into all of it. Machines can go analyze that data prescriptively and get you answers very quickly, or at least get you started on insights and help you move in a direction that you need to go to make progress. Whereas you might just smash your head against the wall or smash the smash, do it again.
smash
You
the
can use your
smash.
face if you want. But sometimes you need a little bit of help.
Yeah. Yeah, which kind of leads into the, you know, the life cycle of a vulnerability
Yeah.
and kind of what happens, right? I mean, I know in our notes we put together something. It's fun. So there's that kind of textbook life cycle of a vulnerability, right? There's the asset discovery. Some tool goes out, detects something XYZ for
Yeah.
whatever thing you're using it for, right? Then there's the vulnerability assessment. It gets pulled into the tool. It's assigned like a unique number. It's maybe correlated some internal information. It's just basic like signature kind of
Right. There's the
information adding.
thing.
Yeah, here's the
It's
thing,
pointing
right?
and stuff.
And then in theory, you're supposed to have risk-based, risk scoring or prioritization happen, something like that. We're heading into the world where there's then the remediation planning or auto remediation. We're going to talk about that later. Auto remediation, how AI is doing all that. We kind of hint for it multiple times. Very interesting thing that's happening. And then in theory, once your remediation planning is done, you go to verification and monitoring, right? So you're
Yeah.
done. You verify that the fix is in place, the patch got deployed, it's out where it should be. Your numbers start to fall off, and you kind of go back through that cycle one more time to just make sure that the vulnerability or whatever was detected is gone, right?
Yeah.
But
I mean, this
Kurt,
is this
does
is
it
where
really
we
happen
build
that
on it.
way?
Absolutely not. These things, like the textbooks always say one thing, it never ends up being that way. Like, I'm sorry, I went to university, college, whatever you like to call it, and I learned all kinds of wonderful stuff. I got out in the real world and was like, wow, that's not what it's like at all. And vulnerabilities is one of those things. Like, we just talked about the steps in the process. It always breaks down somewhere, and you always want to be like, for one, we just talked about assessment. Like, if you want to go into management, you have to continuously do that so that the cycle is happening very frequently and you can demonstrate progress. So like the one thing we didn't really mention as a formal step is reporting or communication. You want to say, hey, we did a thing, let's have a party, right? Well, you got to do this continuously to be able to do that. But then it it often fails from the start. First step is discovery, asset discovery, even not even vulnerability discovery, asset discovery. What do you have in your environment?
What do you
We
have in
all
your
know
code
about
base?
shadow IT. Well, what's in your code base? What's in your environment? What does your infrastructure look like? What systems do you run? What software do you run? There are so many things that are classified as assets or resources, if you will. Shadow IT is a thing. AI is
The
putting
sh-
that back in the picture too, because shadow AI is
shadow,
a
yeah.
stupid thing too.
Well, and think
Like,
about it, the shadow IT,
you
dude.
don't know
That's
what you don't know.
the shadow IT's been happening for how many years? Like 20 plus years, and it's still a
Since
problem
before we were
today.
born, man.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. 20, 30 some
We're
40
not.
something
Oh,
years.
I wish I was in my 20s still, but I'm not.
Same. My bones would just bounce back when I hit something.
Yeah,
That
my
good old
fingers
youth.
wouldn't be falling off.
The youth is
Yeah,
wasted on
but
the youth.
Yeah, we had our fun though, but we're still having fun because we're here and we're doing this. But
Yeah.
asset discovery, like half the time you miss assets,
Yep.
so that means you miss vulnerabilities, and this whole cycle breaks down from the start. And who knows, you could be popped and you don't even know it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, the out of the billion reports, they always say that the yes, maybe for a lot of companies, the time to detection of being popped is shrinking, but there's still plenty of companies out there. Random tangent, but I know of a company that got off this. What are the vendors that where they do virtual socks for you? It's like with they're like
The MSSPs,
yeah, yeah,
managed
and
security service providers, spell it
yeah,
out.
there you go. And so it's essentially like an outsourced sock.
Yeah,
Their like report time was like weeks. So
yikes.
you get owned, and they wouldn't inform you for weeks, or
They're
they
just
or you
sitting
wouldn't
around
know.
drinking their coffee.
I don't
Maybe they're
know.
podcasting. I don't know.
That was a legit thing I heard from a reliable source. I was like, that's crazy. Wow, like that would be. I
It's
know,
like
I know. Yeah,
listen to any of the MSSPs like give their sales pitch though, and they'll be like, "We're always on it. We have this all this great technology that we built, and so your time to detect is like minutes." Like, okay, that sounds great, but if it's weeks, like, come on, man.
yeah. That would be crazy. So, but back to it. The asset discovery is always a mess, right? We always miss things.
Absolutely,
So I know every company I've gone to and the multiple AppSec programs I've built, that is something I consistently. It is. I never ever stop doing that asset discovery. I literally am always
no,
looking. I build processes to detect any gaps in my already known asset list. It's not a one time event. It is literally a
no, it's
continuous process.
always ongoing. Like, and I've built so many cloud environments and programs at this point I can't count them. But we are starting to see like even the CSPM tools are coming with this discovery component where it's like you have 10 million assets that I can see in all of your accounts, but there's all this other stuff that looks like it's yours too. You might want to go look at that. And like we discover stuff like that that's ours in that list all the time. And we discover stuff that's not ours and it looks like ours. And we're like, what's that about?
True.
That's a
Somebody
discussion
typo
for a different day.
squatting or something like that. Yeah, someone trying
Yeah.
to impersonate you. Yeah. And then the next part, right? So we have asset discovery, and then you're supposed to do your vulnerability assessment if you're in textbook. But what really happens, scanner just generates a bunch of noise with no
Yeah.
context, right? It doesn't
Just
tell
here's
you,
a bunch of stuff. Have fun.
yeah, here's a bunch of stuff, and it doesn't properly integrate with, your maybe your CMDB, whatever it is, or some kind of resource to inventory, and or it doesn't properly do it. It doesn't properly integrate. You did integrate it, but it's not properly correlating or properly deduping. So then
Yeah.
it just generates a whole bunch of noise, and you're looking at all these mountain of vulnerabilities, being like, what happened here? And you have to detangle that mess. And guess what? When you're detangling that mess, you're literally not fixing or reducing risk.
Yeah. It's time is money. Like
Yep.
you're spending time trying to make sense of it still. Like I just spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on a tool. Why do I still have to invest all this time and resources into figuring it out?
Yeah, yeah. As we're saying, it's vendors for me. They're stuck in this detection,
Yeah.
risk, vulnerability assessment process, and they're not in the thinking of, oh, we need to manage this.
I
So
think the industry is starting to change though, because like I've talked about this with others and in different forums and whatnot. But the whole detection approach, like you detect, and then by the time you go and fix it, like I'm sorry, the attacker is gone. Like you detected a problem, you went and fixed it. Someone drove by, exploited it, took your data, ran off, and you're like, ah, well, now we have a bigger problem. Detection's a thing of the past. Like being able to say, "Hey, there might be a problem here." Wonderful. It takes too long to go and fix it because attacks happen on the order of minutes these days. So we're moving to a place where you have to like be in the runtime. You have to actively prevent these things from even being put out there. And so I think we're starting to see some of these new school vendors or the new kids on the block emerge, and that's what they're aiming to do. So, like in the CSPM space, I know I've mentioned like Upwind and a handful of others they take that approach. They focus on the runtime rather than just detection. And now we're starting to see vulnerability vendors emerge to do the same. which is
Yeah.
great. It's just going to take time to kind of take over as the norm.
Yeah. Well, I also think that if you do have some kind of auto remediation or auto fix or auto prevention, it's going to take a lot more time for humans to get comfortable with that. A lot of
Yeah.
us are very uncomfortable turning on that option because what's the worst thing besides getting popped? Crushing your
Just
business so you
it
can't
breaks
do
everything
it
and you
breaks
can't
everything.
operate.
You can't operate. Is that more costly
And
than getting owned? Because you could be owned and still be operating your business and generating revenue in a way, right? Sure,
right,
yes, you have, but if you can stem that bleeding pretty quick, right? I'm
yeah,
randomly
contain it.
staying. This is so funny. I'm randomly studying for the CISSP. That is totally like textbook thing they say.
It
If
really is.
it really is, it is. It says in there like if you first stem the bleeding, you don't just shut down the system, right? You try to
Right.
isolate and contain the threat without, with minimizing business risk. So
There you
I don't.
go.
I
A
think
little
it's
bit
gonna
of
take
SecOps 101 for everyone.
right. It's gonna take a long time for human beings to get in the okay for that, right? In the okay
I
to
absolutely.
and make our
'Cause
systems more resilient.
you have to trust the technology, and everyone's like, I don't want to trust the machines. That's crazy talk. Like, I had this debate. I sat on a customer advisory board for one of the big tech solutions in the space. And there were literally like 20 of us sitting around a table one day, and the question came up around auto remediate. Like, does
Yeah,
anyone use it? And every single person around the table said, absolutely not.
yeah,
It's like, why? I don't trust it.
yeah,
It's gonna break my whole operation because it doesn't know the context. It's gonna say, I found a problem, or I think I found the problem, and I fixed it. And you're like, well, you shouldn't have, because now I can't make money.
yeah. And when I hear things, I was at a different table, different dinner, same conversation, but with AppSec folks. Everybody around the table except me. Everybody on the table was like, "No, I always want to be in the loop. I always want to be in the loop. I always want a human in the
I
loop."
don't.
And I was like, "No, I don't. What do you mean?" I was like, "If I have to have a human in the loop, what that tells me is that I have failed at testing, I've failed at
Yes.
regression testing, and I've failed at resilience." Right? We should
Well,
be
that's
building our systems to handle all this. You shouldn't let something go out the door that needs a human. If it passed all my tests and I know I, great coverage, why wouldn't I? Right? Or maybe at least you set a threshold, right? I just a blanket
yeah.
no is the wrong answer. I think you can classify auto remediate into different categories of, if it's between this, risk level or threshold or category, we always accept the auto remediation, and we don't, and if it passes all the tests, it goes out the door. And then if it's in
Yeah.
this category, that's where the human in the loop comes in, right? But splitting it apart, but saying no, I always want somebody in there. I'm like, what world do you live in? We're heading towards, like, for
I
days,
want to sleep, man.
right? And 20 years ago, what did everybody say? Automate, 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 automate. And what you're just telling me is, oh, the automation is doing too much. It's
Do
too
it
much
halfway.
automate. Yeah, yeah. I do. Whoa, you dial back your automation. You're doing too good of a job. I'm like, what? You're crazy,
Yeah.
dude.
Like, I want to set it on autopilot, man. Like, I tell this to everyone. Like, everyone kind of looks at me funny. I'm like, I'm here. I try to design myself out of every job I ever get into, and they're like,
Hmm.
why would you do that? Like, because I can move on to the next one and do something fun again. Like, I don't know. I like automating. I like building technology. I want it to work for me. That's the whole point. Otherwise, I'd still be using pen and paper for everything.
Yeah, yeah. Well, we've diverged back to, so scanners are scanning without noise and without context. They're generating a ton of noise,
Lots of noise.
lots of
We
noise.
just made a lot of noise.
We just
That
made
was
a
an
lot of noise.
example for
Yeah,
everyone.
there you go. Chaos. Then after you have risk scoring and prioritization, but as we've already alluded to in a lot of different ways, these tools are terrible, literally terrible. What
Yeah.
most of the time it's just like CVSS scores, which we're gonna get a whole thing on CVSS scores and all of those things and how
Yeah.
that's a
That
whole
could be a
issue.
whole episode.
That could be, yeah. There's maybe some tags, maybe some little sprinkling of some hope dust on top of your vulnerability scoring.
Opium.
Yeah, hopium. But there's really not much in these tools. I know from the AppSec world, like when I look at like traditional vulnerability management tools, they've been trying. AppSec world, a lot of the tools they just serve up a CVE or a blanket severity score. Maybe there are some vendors starting to introduce some known exploit and some other stuff coming in, but it's
Right.
never enough. I usually have to take all that data and I have to enrich it. I have to have somebody build out some awesome automation that enriches all my data, or I purchase a tool, something, that helps me ingest all that data and handle that. It's it's really mess.
Yeah. I mean, it's we keep coming back to the same point really. Like there's a theme to this conversation. You need context. I know we said it in the cloud security episode. I'm pretty sure we said it in the DevSecOps episode. Like it's always you need to build the context, use all of this data to actually understand how this fits into your environment so you can act on it properly.
Yeah.
That's true of every discipline in this industry.
Yeah. It's totally true. And then we go into remediation. We kind of already dived into that already too, right? The
Yeah.
remediation, the windows are changing. You have regression fears, you have product deadlines, you have interference, you have concerns, the scope creep, all these different things that are happening. It just doesn't happen over the day, or in a day. Some of these
Nope.
vulnerabilities take re-architecting. And what do we have to do? We have to accept the risk. I've had vendors who don't even have a proper, again, what we're discussing here is the vulnerability life cycle, really. What happens from a vulnerability from detection to end? And they don't even think about that. They're just like, hey, guess what? We detected stuff.
Yeah. We
And
found it for you.
yeah, we found it for you. Well, I can't accept the risk. I can't, mark it as a false
Defer
positive,
it. Right.
defer it, ignore it. I can't. Maybe like I think Ben, it would be cool if they could get classified into a different section that I can monitor and track like risks that I've accepted or deferred, and I can contextualize that too, so that I can know that at times. A lot of vendors, it's either just ignore and it's only ignore, right? You only have either fix their vulnerability or ignore it. And I'm like, but there's so many different things that could happen in a business. How did what do you guys do in your industry? I'm like, it doesn't make sense.
Yeah. Well, and then too, like if things are always changing, right? So if you like accept the risk, and what happens if that vulnerability suddenly becomes exploitable in the world? You're like, I need to know that because I need to go reevaluate that now. So I need this thing to be paying attention to other data sources
Yeah.
to evolve with me
Yeah.
and the world around me. It's
Exactly.
it's very hard to do. I respect that, but this is what we need in the world today. The value is not in finding the problem. Like we talk about this all the time in leadership. If you bring me a problem and don't have a solution, I'm going to look at you funny. Be
Yeah.
like, where's the rest of it? So
Exactly.
find problem, recommend solution, or build the context and push me in that direction to give me the real value of how do I go and address this.
Yeah. And so after you're done remediating, you have to verify and monitor it, right? But does that
Yeah.
actually happen?
Nope.
No,
It's like a
right?
drive-by. I fixed it, I'm out. And
I'm out.
then
Yeah.
lo and behold, the patch failed and you're like, "Oh, crap, it's still there."
Yeah, patch failed. Maybe it didn't fully roll out. Maybe it silently failed on some systems when during the upgrade, and
Right.
we don't know because maybe we don't have logging and proper detection on that logging. Maybe we are logging, and yeah, we couldn't detect that a patch failed. And then the next vulnerability scan is going to show it, and then we're like, is that just a false positive? This all went out, right?
Like, why is it still there? It
Yeah,
drives you crazy.
yeah. It's a again, it's a mess,
A little bit of chaos.
a little bit of
So
chaos.
verification is hard. You gotta do testing, you gotta verify, you gotta make sure it's done so that you can properly move on, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And then you can actually go do the reporting and celebrate like, "Hey, we did a thing. Now back to work."
Yeah. Yeah. And then, I mean, the final thing, as you were saying, I kind of missed it when we were talking earlier, reporting and communication. What really happens, we really build our reporting for one set of audience to satisfy our auditors. So
Auditors.
all the time
Check.
comes in. Oh, look at all these dashboards. They look great, right? Or we're doing things. Looks great. Done. They don't, the tools don't allow you to build custom dashboards. They don't allow you to expand on them, measure or change them up, modify them for your company's risk appetite or risk levels or risk XYZ. Maybe you want different views. Maybe your CISO wants a different view. Maybe your VP or
Yeah.
CEO wants a different view. Maybe your product managers on the engineering side or cloud side or cloud ops side teams all want a different view so that they can monitor it in a different way. All these tools just serve it up in one way. It's one serves all, but it
Yeah.
really doesn't serve
Like,
all. It serves no one.
need the flexibility to bake in your what's important to you.
Yeah.
Because again, it's like you just said, it's not one size fits all in any industry, at
Yeah.
least not in my experience.
And what happens at the end of the day with all this? It all gets dumped in a spreadsheet, tossed over the fence into a Jira ticket, some kind or a
Yep.
ServiceNow ticket, and boom, we're done, right? Success. That's how
Man,
I
I'm
sign off my day, man.
tired just thinking about it.
That's fair. That's fair. I mean, so we kind of alluded to it. CVSS.
Tell us how you really feel, Cameron. I
Yeah.
know you're itching to.
There's just it's a interesting world with CVSS. I posted on
You're
LinkedIn
being
today
so
about
nice
it.
right now.
I know I posted on LinkedIn about it because I've been like trying to dive and understand CVSS, and I wanted to get other opinions. I've had many conversations with people, but CVSS is the common vulnerability scoring system. It's, I would say, a backbone that we have had forever. It was released in 2005. Version 2 was in 2007. Version 3, 2015. And version 4 in 2023. Wow, 2023? Does that feel right? Oh my gosh. I remember when it came out and I was like
Yeah.
checking it out.
I
I'm hoping.
think there's still like under version 4, there's like no scores. I feel like every time I look at
Well,
one, I'm
because
like, where's the score?
you have to migrate your scores because they
Right.
added more things to it.
Yeah. Then I mean there's multiple numbering authorities, right? And then everyone scores differently, and
Yeah,
it's just like
yeah,
people get to it when they get to it. So
yeah.
they're understaffed and under resourced and the rest of it too.
Yeah. Well, I think the most interesting thing, and the reason I bring up each version is because as I was reading through these and doing my research and trying to understand, like version 1 was just some like basic scoring thing. The problem with that scoring is that it was usually inconsistent, right? And
Yeah.
limited or lacked all needed context, right? Version 2, from what I was reading, it had too much context. And most people were like, hey, this is too much. It's too much to fill. And probably, from what I'm seeing, they just weren't being filled in correctly. And so everyone kept reverting to 1. Then we went to 3 and 3. Yes, it improved the base metrics and some complexity around attacking, but it still had fundamental, maybe environmental issues or, adding that additional context that we needed. With 2023 and the version 4 coming out, I talked to a lot of leaders. I was looking at it at first. I was like, "This is really cool, and this is really going to help me." But it created more context and didn't make too much sense around what it was trying to do. It was really trying to apply a risk to it. The problem with that is that CVSS generates a score, which then turns into a severity. But that severity and that score at the end of the day does not apply to my organization's context, right? It's some ambiguity and random whoever is
Right. It's
scoring
like
it, right?
someone's opinion. It's like,
Yeah,
I'm glad you think that.
yeah,
But it's mine again, you have to bring it contextualize it for where you're at. And this is where we get into the risk-based vulnerability kind of rescoring. You have to factor in a bunch of things in your environment, and you might reclassify that vulnerability entirely and rescore it based on what the all the environmental factors. Does it actually pose a risk? Maybe
yeah,
not. And again, that's like I'm I'm glad the tool found it, but I had to just go do a bunch more work to reclassify it.
yeah. That's kind of what I'm thinking about is that teams often in their immaturity state or when they're starting out, and they're starting the companies are starting to build their security teams, CVSS is usually treated as like the pedestal, right? This is what we're
Yeah,
going to use. It's the starting point. The problem with that starting point is majority of CVSS scores that come in, they're all criticals and highs, but they're not all criticals and highs for my
yeah,
organization. The thing beyond that, as we said, most of the tools, they don't have a way for me to tune it, right? We see a lot of other vendors
yeah,
and other things that are merging in the space. We got EPSS, that's a big one, but that has its own set of issues. The CISA KEV, right? KEV,
yeah.
that
Known
one's a well,
exploited vulnerabilities.
yeah, that one. is only, I think, what was it, a 3%? No, I think it was like
It's like
2.4%.
1%, I think. It
Yeah,
depends. Like CISA, the what is it? Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency,
yeah,
government agency.
yeah.
Um, they have their version, and then like there's vendor check. They have another version where it's actually there's more. I think
I think vuln check's
CISA's
like
version,
4% or something.
it's
And
check.
CSAT,
I think it's like 4,000. CISA is in the 1,000. So there's a big discrepancy.
yeah,
But
yeah.
check is trying to do it more real time with zero lag.
Yes, yes, they are. I mean, and that's what I was going to allude to. Is like Kev, the big problem that we're seeing is there's a major delay from
Yeah.
ingestion and then communicated outward to where that known exploit, right? Kev really tracks known exploits being exploited in the wild. They're usually lagging. They've
Yeah,
said
like
that.
the campaign has already happened or is happening, and
Yeah.
so you might have already been hit.
Yeah, and this all is compounded by, and that we've had both CISA, both NVD, they've all had massive money and support
Yeah,
issues, which is just compounding this problem. We probably should have started that at the start. I bet some people who are in tune are like pounding their keyboard or the floor, being like, "Why did they mention that at the beginning?" Because that's the root of the problem. It's totally true. These services, you know, there was a time I know earlier in this year, and then earlier this year and last year, that we were like, is NVD even going to be here? Is Kev going to even
right.
be here anymore? Like, are they literally going to go away? Who's going to be? And they're like the backbone, literally the backbone of the vulnerability world. Are they going to go away? Right? Somehow
Yeah.
they're still
Well, I
working,
think
but they're working behind. They're working slower. They're not as good as they used to be.
it speaks to the community in this industry too, though. Is like you have all these practitioners that come together and try to solve that problem, right? Like if it does go away, there's going to be a bunch of companies or people or whoever they come together and plug the hole, right? Stop the ship from sinking. Ultimately, that didn't happen yet. It it's always a possibility, but it points to a different problem in the industry that the root authority on all of these things is at risk itself.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a really big problem. So, I mean, we talked about why CVSS has got a major issue. EPSS, I really like it, but my biggest problem is that the like time window and context window is 30 days. So
Yeah,
out of that window, you kind of sometimes the data divulges, it's not as accurate, and it doesn't also incorporate a bunch of other threat intelligence information out there that I've seen. Yes, it does involve in some ways, but not as much as I would like. It's one avenue that I need to know is incorporated in my vulnerability threat
right.
management process.
I think we're seeing more tools included. So you'll
Yeah,
see the CVSS score, you'll see the EPSS score, and you're like put those two together. You're like, if it's a critical and it's exploitable, they're like, maybe I should care about it. But it's the same sort of thing. Like it's a prediction. It's not contextualized to your environment. It may not even be reachable. And I know I'm starting to branch into the next section, but that's kind of on purpose.
yeah,
Um, but where this all really kind of comes together for me is Kev. So if you know something's being exploited out in the wild, that skyrockets the priority. Now I can investigate it, I can contextualize it and say I'm either at risk because it's on a server that's exposed to the internet, for example. That's high risk. If it's all internal and I can paint the picture of, good luck to you, you're never going to get there. Okay, I should still address it at some point, probably, and that may change at any moment, but it's not as high priority. And so, like, this is the dance we have to constantly do. Now, amplify that out across, call it 10,000 different vulnerabilities across thousands of different systems. Like, it's hard.
yeah,
You can't, there's no way to keep up.
yeah. But I want to challenge you on Kev in a little of a way, because my biggest problem with Kev again is the lag time. When my
Yeah.
research I was reading, it's like 6+ months from when they found that there's a known attack path. And we were just talking about earlier, that means the attacker could have been in my environment, done whatever they're going to
In
do,
and
and
out and
out.
gone.
Right? That's a huge problem. Why that needs to change? How can we
Yeah.
rely on a data source like that with such a lag time, with AI that's happening, it's only making the attacker's path, sneakier,
Faster.
better, faster, right? We're seeing more complex phishing campaigns, all these different things happening around with the enablement and usability of AI. How can I trust a source that's lagging?
Yeah, I mean, now I'm reacting to something that's potentially 6 months in the past. Like if the newer version or the one that check is maintaining, because I think this is in the community, they don't make you pay for it, which is amazing. Like I just said, there's vendors and people that come together to try and actually help the entire industry. Um, it's if you can be more real time with it. If the lag is like a day or two, that's much better than 6 months.
Yeah,
So it absolutely needs to not have significant lag, because then I'm doomed. I'm going to be playing keep up the whole way through, and I'm
yeah,
never going to succeed. Um, but if we get to the more real time model or near real time, let's start there, because that's more easy. That's easier to achieve. That's much more useful.
yeah. That's kind of what I'm saying is that we have to utilize so many different sources, but all
Yeah,
of them have a flawed approach, and you have to be aware of that. And then at the end of the day, you could use CVS, you could use EPS, you could use KEV, you could use vuln checker, you could use all these different things. Problem is, they are all in a way assumed, viewed, known as risk. And I do not believe these things are risk. They are a component of your risk. Your
yeah,
risk is where is it in the environment, the location. Because you could have a KEV, right, a known exploited thing, and say KEV is working day one, so or within hours of detection that you're an alert, but it's behind an isolated environment. Is that really a critical? No.
no, and I mentioned it once, and I know we're driving into the next part of the conversation, which you and I are. We obviously agree on it. Reachability is
Yeah.
something you need to factor in every step of the way, and reachability happens at multiple levels. So I know, I can see you. You're itching to talk about reachability, so get after it.
Oh my gosh, it's. I wrote a whole thing about this because I'm very frustrated with it. Because again, the industry, all our vendors are stuck in a detect, detect, detect mentality. And then
Yeah,
over the last couple years, I've seen all this shift towards reachability, reachability, reachability. I turn on reachability, my vulns don't really change because it's not that great, or it doesn't actually do what it's supposed to say, or XYZ, right? Maybe they're lacking the information. Reachability requires a lot more contextual information about the vulnerability that some of these tools just don't have because they haven't populated
yeah,
it, right? But at the end of the day, I don't. Yes, yes, I want to know it's reachable, but that's not what I actually want to know. What I want to know is it exploitable, and not
yes,
just exploitable. I want to know that it is truly exploitable, because detect is just I found a vulnerability. Reachable is I am using that vulnerable or that function, so like I always go back to the AppSec world, that vulnerable function or vulnerable attack path in whatever library or XYZ path. I'm actually using
right,
it. So I'm known to use it.
right. You're executing that code.
Yeah, and so with that, we take in a reasonable jump. And I want to say, that's the big thing. A lot of people teach reachability as law. That like, oh, if you're reachable, you're vulnerable. It's not true. It
Nope.
is literally not true. And that's why I say exploitable, exploitability. Are we actually exploitable? That's what I want to know. I want every scanner, every tool I have to literally tell me you are exploitable. And not just that, exploitable for me is that it has taken in the contextual information of my environment and has solved what a human might do, right? And this is one thing I'm really excited around AI. So excited. There's so many AI SaaS tools coming out. Everybody keeps announcing them. There's so many other vendors who are starting to do this. This to me, like AI remediation is really cool, but AI exploitability, that's what I
Yeah,
want.
that's
Because
where the money's at.
that's where I feel that, yeah, that's what I want in my teams, because that's what my developers care about. Yes, they maybe want somebody to auto remediate, but auto remediation, my biggest problem with that, especially at the code level, I'm going to keep going there. It's my background. I love code. That is maybe it doesn't write it in your style or how your company's schema is, or how you're supposed to do something. what my devs really want, they just want to know that they're fixing something that is actually improving the company's attack posture and reducing risk. 99%
Yeah.
of the time when we're talking, all of us professionals are saying we're remediating vulnerabilities. What we are saying is that we are hoping that we've remediated vulnerabilities. We are hoping we have plugged a proper hole, because nobody can really go analyze all these vulnerabilities and tell you which one's exactly exploitable. Often we have to do that. We have to be pick or choosy, right? We have to go show that. We have to actually become attackers and exploit our app,
Oh,
record the video. How long does that take? That takes hours. I want a tool to do that. I cannot wait to deploy that in my environment and just watch my vulnerabilities go from, maybe thousands to like 5.
yeah. It'd be
But I'll get off
amazing.
my soapbox.
I mean, I agree with you. I mean, I don't have anything to add. I don't think I can even properly do it justice trying to play the devil's advocate in this situation, because it's so noisy. And what you just said is, I want to know that I'm investing my time in something that truly matters. Because think about any task you take on, whether it's work or on a personal project or in your personal lives. If you invest a bunch of time and energy into doing something only for you to find out that when you're done it was wasted because the result was for nothing, how do you feel?
Yeah, not
You don't
good.
feel good. Like, I just wasted my time, or I wasted all of my money, or whatever. You're just like, you get angry or upset and whatever. So devs who are already strapped for time, security teams are telling them to fix 10,000 things and they're like, why? I don't have time. But if I can tell them, well, actually, you only need to fix 5 of them, and this is why it truly matters. And look, this is what the exploit was and how it unfolded. Now they can have that understanding of, I know how to fix it, and I know that I'm truly fixing a problem, and that my investment of my time and effort is worth it.
Yeah. The next step that I see really in vulnerability after exploitability, and I'm gonna throw my developer or my director leadership hat on, right? It's exposure. And I bet there's other better words, but I'm kind of leaning towards exposure
Uh,
right now.
I think the definition of exposure is what make brings it all together,
Yep,
right? Because exposure is really putting it in a business context.
exactly. Right. And that's what we have to do at every point. I think engineers, anybody who's at the, individual contributor level, who's finding these vulnerabilities, the best thing you can do in your career is learn how to take what you are doing and translate it back to exposure, or you could just say the business, right? How can you
Business
translate this
impact.
upward? Yeah. How do you translate that upward? How can you make what you are doing so relatable? And that's what vulnerability management in general and all these vendors need to head towards, is relating the business risk, because right now all I see is fear that is perpetuated as a selling point.
Do not lead with FUD,
Yeah.
fear, uncertainty, and doubt. I will call you out every stinking time. I hate it.
Yeah. Security is
And
an
I've worked
enabler.
for more senior leaders that are like, stop with the FUD. Like, it has
Yeah.
zero place here.
Yeah. But you see leaders in security and professionals who lead with fear, when in reality, security is not supposed to be this fear mongering machine. We're supposed to
No.
be the team that enables the business to be safe and
Yes.
assure our customers are safe. That is a business value, and we need to translate and think in that direction, and we need to stop perpetuating fear.
Yeah.
There's nothing else. Stop.
It's
Full stop.
I think fear does the opposite of what the goal is, right? Like, in for years and years we called it like assurance. So building
Mhm.
assurance. Now what we're seeing more is we're calling it trust. We're building trust with
Yeah.
our customers. And that's what we need to do because it unlocks business. If I trust you, it's much easier to get things done. Whereas if I try to scare the pants off you, you're going to be like, "Whoa, man, I don't want to help you at all."
Yeah. And that leads me to, for vendors, they're going to have to somehow translate exploitability, right, from this practical standpoint to apply actual business context and like stakeholder input, right? That's what is going to happen. I don't have a perfect way to solve that or communicate that from a vendor side. I know how I do it internally, but I'm like it's another 5-10 years. We'll kind of that's where I predict everything going.
Yeah. I mean, that's we in some spaces, like in the risk management space, you see tools now that use different models to try and like model out potential financial impact of things. And that's putting it in one sort of business terms because not everyone understands security and the impact. But what does everyone understand? Money. If it's going to cost me $10 million because I got breached and have to deal with that and reputation hit and loss of business, whatever, I understand that much easier than I understand, well, I've got to spend how much time fixing this code and what's it going to do for me. It's the number is easy for all business leaders, whereas the context of what we do every day in security, your expertise, it's like I know you and I have worked with communications coaches, and one particular stands out that always tells us, like, I know you're smart. Like, you don't need to tell me you're smart and everything you know. I need you to tell me what you think about the information. I need to know the impact. So put it in those terms. You don't have to demonstrate how smart you are.
Very true. Very true. Kurt, I think we've kind of talked through it all. At least what we want to do in part one.
Well, at least part one, yeah.
Yeah.
It's we could probably keep going, but we're trying to keep it digestible here, people.
Yeah. Yeah. So I mean, we've talked about, we introduced the topic. We talked about the storm of vulnerabilities that we're dealing with. The
Perfect
different,
storm.
it had perfect storm. Yeah, the difference between assessment and management, the life cycle, CVS, CVSS, EPSS, KEV, all the different ones, reachability, the noise. It's not a win-win scenario. I don't know if we have all the answers, but we definitely have a problem. I don't know. Do you want to tease us about part
We
two?
also have a lot of opinions and hot takes too, which is what makes it fun. But part two is going to be interesting because we're going to go deeper on like tooling and the validating exposure. We're going to get more into the AI and what's unfolding right now in the industry because I know everyone loves to hear, like, count how many times you say AI in every conversation these days, or watch a keynote from any major tech company. Count how many times they say AI. That's like it's a stupid thing they do in the articles about these events. But we'll tie it all together. What does it look like in the context of a modern vulnerability management program? It's going to be a lot of fun. Plenty more hot takes to come. Stick with us. And I mean, smash the smash. 5 stars if you like it. Give us a like. Give us a follow. Smash the smash, as Cameron likes to say. It's
Yep.
bananas.
It's
Gosh, keep
bananas.
slipping. I love saying that. It's bananas.
Bananas. Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's coffee, chaos, and ProdSec. And Kurt, I had a great time.
It's always a blast. We'll see you all next time.